Alright, so the game's just starting. One of the really important things that I think is important to note is that SKT has a lot of win conditions, and they also have a lot of objectives to cure, insurance policies via the Callista. They have a lot of sneak insurance via the Callista. They have the split push potential via blue side from Fiora. They have disengage and engage coming out of Gragas. They have disengage and engage coming out of Wolf. Their comp is so flexible, and it is so fitting for a LeBlanc mid. Well, then again, you could have played a lot of mid laners into this comp. The fact that it's a composition that LeBlanc is free in, and that she's not really forced into doing anything specific, and the other thing that she has multiple targets that she can go to soften up. She doesn't actually need to get the full-on execute. Means that it's really good for LeBlanc, and she's basically in a very comfortable setting. Whether or not she gets the 100-0 is completely irrelevant. And it looks like they're going for a 4-man point. So they're just going to force Duke out of the jungle, and then they're going to 3-man it, and Lucian's going to go top. So are they going to, I guess they're going to transform this into a 4-man on the tower. Also, for those that are watching in Discord, the game timer is 2:15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. The one thing that's important to mention about this is depending on how their respective clears end up concluding between Gragas and Graves, I think that there's a lot more potential for Gragas, because usually the people that lane swap last, or the reactive lane swappers, the ones that end up going into top lane, are generally the ones that can capture the Herald, and so that's pretty important, because right now I don't think that Dragon is actually as important as Herald early on. I think that the first Herald is definitely much stronger than Dragon, at least with my current understanding of everything. They already have the teleport out of Lysandra. That's also really, really important to note, especially because if a Herald timing gets used against mid lane. But these are things that you can talk about it, you can theorize about it, but don't expect to actually see it at this point in time. Now, on the other hand, QG's win conditions are very generic. It's going to be very team fight focused. They definitely want to take fights inside of condensed areas, such as trapping SKT inside of the jungle, leading into Baron, or fighting them inside of their own blue side jungle, before or after a Dragon fight, fighting them, in and around Dragon. Wide open engagements, though, in the center, like what you're seeing right now with LeBlanc and Faker just sort of dancing in the middle. This is an area where their team does not benefit the most from an open engagement. So expect that, as the longer the game goes, that QG fights for vision control over the condensed areas of the map. Now it's here comes the lane swap, and now you can see that Graves is now on the bottom portion of the map, but it's really easy for Fiora to just basically play relatively safe and not get any CS, and this is just sort of the story of top laners right now. At certain points of the game, they just sort of don't do anything for a few minutes. They fall behind on levels, they fall behind on XP, and it's sort of what you have to expect. Now the problem with this is they don't really have a lot of EV to go for Dragon, because if they go for Dragon is a lot harder to manage than Rift Herald is. It also is going to take longer to execute than a Rift Herald. So what ends up happening is Fiora and LeBlanc have a lot more potency to disrupt than, say, like a Poppy or a Lysandra does on Rift Herald. Alright, also I'm going to refresh stream per recommendation. Give me 1 second. Okay. Some people were complaining that I was behind, so that's fine. And my screen buffered again. The game timer now is 550, 551, 552, 553, 554. Now, when QGV is going for the four, when they're going for the 4-tower trade, which obviously it's not going to be a 4-tower trade in this instance, I don't think that it actually benefits them too much, given their composition, because all that would end up doing is enabling SKT to be able to lock 2 lanes and then force a mid lane engagement, and we already basically discussed that mid lane engagement is not going to benefit QG's comp, and they don't benefit from acceleration either. They don't have... The only really hyper snowbally champion that if he gets going and he can get out of control is going to be Graves, but it's going to be way too easy to disengage any sort of attempt that he can make at forcing any sort of plays via the Gragas or via Bard, so that doesn't really matter. Lyssandra's going to need time to ramp up. Lysandra also, you can see, is going for probably Abyssal Scepter first item, which means that she's going to have less cooldown, less utility, less control. Now, the other thing that's important to mention about this is the attacks on blue timing attacks that you can use against Lysandra when she doesn't have any sort of CDR and when she doesn't have any mana regen. Now, these are all things, these are concepts that involve Drift Herald, and I don't really care that teams aren't doing it yet. I think that it's important to talk about the possibility, and I think it's important to talk about how powerful it can be if used properly, regardless of if people are doing it yet or not. But I think that's something that people aren't doing enough, is timing attacks against blue or red objectives. Wow, that was such a cookie cutter gank, and nothing really came out of it. They did end up just getting her ultimate, but that does assert a lot of pressure. And now Wolf is just sort of on the roam, level 3 at 8 minutes standard. It doesn't really matter though, because Fiora is level 4, and Poppy just hit 5 a little bit ago, I guess. Alright, now Duke hits 5, okay, so it's not actually that weird. So when they go for the top lane tower, this is kind of nice for QG. I think that this is a much more beneficial trade for QG than it is for SKT, so I'm a little bit curious about why they're willingly accepting, in terms of like, why is SKT accepting this. And the reason that I say that is because top lane is not going to be a lane that they're ever really going to get to make use out of the longer the game goes on. And it looks like they're just going to go for a 5-man. Now, this is something that I talked about. This happened actually in a EU LCS game, I want to say with Splice. And this is a choice that some teams, if you are accelerating really fast and you're in a position where you have everything to gain from basically flipping a coin, or not flipping a coin, but going 50-50 break even inside of a fight, it's probably going to be ideal to do something like that. Let's say that SKT and QG end up taking a fight in front of the inhibitor, and let's say that they break even. SKT is actually the one that loses. If they break even and QG comes out on top for some reason, so if it's a scenario that it goes 50-50, in the event that SKT wins, not too much is lost for QG. In the scenario that QG wins, a lot is gained. So it ultimately is sort of like a win-win. And so it's interesting that they just took that choice to go for it, but not so much of a bad play. Now, having Fiora lock the lane inside of the base, this is the problem that QG is now gonna face, where they can't make any use out of that lane anymore. So they have the temporary gold advantage, and SKT was at a disadvantage, not anymore, in terms of control and everything, but now that's been negated, and it looks like they're going to end up securing Dragon. Poppy, nice spell, and QG now really overextending, and this is the problem. When you bust open that top lane tower, you basically force yourself into only being able to play 2 things remaining relative to the game timer. And so when that ends up happening, it becomes a lot easier to defend against, and it's more simple. Oh my god. Okay, my monitor went out. Oh my god. Okay. Alright. I apologize for that. So we're just watching this fight now. I think, honestly, when you capture Alistar there, I think the choice to continue the fight is relatively poor. from SKT, because basically you're probably going to come out on top a majority of the time, but it's going to be very thin, and the amount of gold that you're going to end up coming out on top with is not nearly as much as if you had just turned around, counter jungled Graves, and then also secured mid tower, because then it gives you a much easier area to fortify and to defend from in the next 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and it also is going to give you vision control over Graves' red side jungle, which is also going to give you power over Herald. So their decision to keep chasing in the fight is pretty stupid. It's really poor, and it ends up costing them, because they had a really big advantage that was gained off of that, but now they just lost it. I still think that SKT is actually ahead. Don't let the gold value mislead you. You know, obviously QG is ahead right now in terms of gold, but I don't think that really matters, because what we're going to see now is QG has to eventually shove the lane back into SKT and top, and even though they can temporarily make use of it, there's not much else going out on the map, so I don't think that there's going to... Oof! And Gragas ends up getting that snipe down. There's not much else going on the map, so QG is forced to fight inside areas that they don't want to fight in, which is obviously just going to be mid lane. And even though they have SKT's mid lane turret busted open, it doesn't really do too much for them. And now with Dragon being down and Herald being down, QG is forced into this scenario where they have to just they have to do a passive farm game type thing, and this is where SKT is going to benefit. So in terms of playing against a comp's weaknesses, or like playing to your strengths, they're not doing a very good job at doing so right now. They were absolutely dominating SKT, but now they've dropped the ball and it's not going too well. The other problem is because QG's team comp is more so reliant on combo dynamics. Like none of their champions except for Poppy or Graves has a standalone value. Whereas on SKT, LeBlanc has standalone value, Fiora has standalone value, Gragas has standalone value, Kalista has standalone value. So when you have something like that occurring, it makes it much more difficult to aimlessly wander around. And so even though we already even though we've already established that QG should just basically be farming up their own side jungle and then just deflecting every attempt SKT makes to try to penetrate any sort of defense that they can muster up across the map until the next neutral objective comes up, and then they need to fight over the neutral objective. Because when the game timers keep increasing, what's going to eventually happen is if QG can take a team fight, it's all too easy, especially with the dual teleport to just Fiora's teleport, to teleport into top lane and maybe get the inhibitor, depending on who lives. Obviously, it's going to be ideal if Poppy lives. The other thing that's important is Lysandra didn't actually go for Abyssal Scepter, so LeBlanc should be dealing... I don't know what runes Lyssandra's running, but LeBlanc should be dealing pretty close to true damage after you factor in runes, masteries, and Abyssal onto Lysandra, and that's really big. And the other thing is that because she's going for a quest item, Lyssandra's not actually going to hit a power spike until around 25-26 minutes, which I guess that doesn't actually coincide with the third dragon, assuming that this first one just gets immediately lit up. So that's not good. So now what's happening is you're just going to see SKT group up. They're going to control vision over Dragon. Expect to see them basically secure it. And this is going to come the point in the game where SKT's flexibility across their composition is going to enable them to do more things than QG can do. And with the tier 1 tower already being down in mid, there's actually no hope for SKT to mistakenly attempt to defend it. So that's actually really nice, because oftentimes we've seen a lot of teams not understand that they should have actually conceded the tier 1 tower for superior position. And it looks like they're going for an execute onto blank. I don't know if that was the best idea. And then, oh, Fiora misses the snipe. But it's okay because LeBlanc, oh my god. Wow, Duke got out. And this is gonna be game. Okay. Alright, that's game over. Uzi's like complaining about LOL right now. What's a king to a god? There you go. I felt like that was actually a very fitting time for that quote. It's also important to note, so if you're watching this, the CS values are actually relatively realistic. Don't look at the CS and think like something's wrong. Relative to how the game... CS is never actually relative to timer. It's always relative to how the game's being played. That's why it's so impressive even if the game is extremely chaotic, someone has ridiculously high CS. That means they're literally playing like a god above gods. But anyways, this team fight I think is pretty bad. I also like that Fiora... Now, let's say that Fiora didn't have no HP. Let's say Fiora was at half HP. The decision to actually go mid lane and just instantly start pushing because it was obvious that SKT had secured the fight, even if, like, Bard or someone would have died, the decision to send Fiora immediately mid and then multi-prong attack QG at a QG objective and a neutral objective and 2 lanes at once, I think is going to be the optimal play every single time. And it's a lot better than what a lot of teams end up doing, where they overcommit resources to one particular objective, and it ends up being overkill. And because it's overkill, it's not very efficient, and time-wise, they end up losing out on time that they could have dedicated elsewhere on the map to, gain them either better position, better ward coverage, better anything. Better lane control, whatever. Now, it's also really interesting that QG just keeps mindlessly charging forward, because you like, now, obviously, to some people, I don't think that this seems very mindless, but honestly, it is. Because realistically, against a Kalista, you're never killing her there. You're never killing Bard there. You're never getting anything there. So when you're overcommitting resources in terms of summoner spells and cooldowns and stuff, that leaves you extremely susceptible until those things come back up. And when you're on the back foot and you're already, playing from behind, that's not something that you want, because you definitely want the utility granted from your cooldowns and from your summoner spells to be able to pull you out. Now, obviously, you can argue that, like, well, now Kalista doesn't have that. Kalista doesn't need it relative to the team compositions. So a little bit of China coming out now. In the mindless aggression. Now, they end up getting... Oh my god! Okay, well, that is the most bizarre teleport in the world. Okay, I don't know what that Poppy's teleport decision making was. I think someone needs to swap the G and the Q, take out the little tail at the bottom of the Q, and that's God V almost. You're just missing the D. But the D is the grade mark that this Poppy's getting at the end of the game. That's what I can tell you. Alright, they just got aced again. Hello? At the end game score screen, when Riot gives you like the letter. It's like S, A, B, C, D. I don't even know if that's like a letter grade. I mean, that you can get, but this Poppy's gotten it. This is nice. This is the type of League of Legends that I like to watch. At least one team doing stuff that's correct. Now, I will say, though, that SKT, they didn't do everything correct there. There was much more, there was a lot more refinement that could have been done during that fight, in terms of immediately breaking off certain members to immediately go to either mid lane or top lane, and that would have been more ideal. And now with Baron coming up, all that SKT really needs to do is they need to basically force QG to fight them in an open area. They need to control the river. They need to control the brushes leading into the river. They need to control the wraiths from QG's area. And you just basically want to take a team fight before QG can get into enclosed areas. And then if you can make any sort of a pick off with LeBlanc, it's just going to immediately mean that you're going to end up securing on objective. Send Fiora bot lane and have Fiora split push immediately. What you're probably going to want to do is you just want to ignore top tower now if you're SKT. Like top lane. You want the top lane to actually shove into you because there's no chance that you can lose a Baron fight. There's also no way that they can break your inhibitor. You also know that Poppy doesn't have teleport and Fiora does. So what you want to do now is you want to execute a 0-4-1 because you want the top lane to be shoved into you if you're SKT. You want it to actually be on your inhibitor because there's nothing QG can do. And that means that it's basically a dead lane, and now they're forced to fight you in either one of two lanes that you can make use of. And if they drop the fight in any lane, that's basically going to mean a Baron. If they drop the fight in the bottom lane, which is where your Fiora split push is going to be, and where that has a lot of potency via the teleport, then it means a secured Baron and probably the parallel inhibitor to Baron, bot lane inhibitor. The other thing is that I like, let's talk about the itemization really quick. So basically, Callista's already dealing unnatural amounts of damage, and she gets the QSS because she realizes that the only chance that QG can actually win a fight is basically if there's some sort of CC that comes out of either Alistar, Poppy, or Lissandra. Okay, on top of that, you see Fiora deviating up her itemization paths, and you see a defensive route coming out of her because again she's already dealing unnatural amounts of damage. I like the Frozen Heart out of Goggess into the Solari Locket because defense is offense in this scenario. Don't ever think that you should just continuously stockpile attack damage and whatever unless attack is defense, which in some cases it is, such as like Riven, where she directly benefits from just having more AD and higher cooldown and, everything. But even in some cases, a Guardian Angel would be correct. I think that after Fiora completes the next item, she should disregard a third or fourth offensive item and just get a Guardian Angel immediately. And I think that would basically seal the deal because QG is extremely combo reliant. And even though they have some periodic damage outside of, even though they have some periodic damage coming out of Lucian or out of Poppy, Lissandra and Graves aren't able to do a standalone against a Fiora if she wakes up from a Guardian Angel. So that's really big. And then Bard, I don't know if the Ruby site sounds a little bit weird, but it doesn't really matter. Also, I have no idea if you guys can hear the laundry in the background, but if you can, I completely apologize, but there's nothing I can do about it. And honestly, if you care about learning about League, you're not going to care about that noise. So, alright. So now, this is the stalemate position, where basically you just have to sort of bounce back and forth. And you just wait for the opponent to make a misstep. And so this is QG getting into a location that they can sort of benefit from, but we already saw them lose a team fight here before, and now they're even further behind than they were before. All that you need to do is really keep Fiora in bot lane. I don't understand why Fiora is... Okay, well, all right, never mind. Now she's moving up. She's moving up fast. Now you just keep Fiora in bot, and you just have Fiora basically perma push, because I don't think Poppy can actually do anything to Fiora right now. Okay. I don't know if Fiora can get this. Yeah. I don't think that Duke. Look at. One thing I want to point out is how SKT is intentionally enabling, well, it may not be intentional, but I think it's intentional. They're intentionally neglecting their top lane, and it basically constantly forces QG into 2 lanes. And that is just something that QG does not want to do, because they want to be able to basically play refugee and run around between 3 lanes and just kind of scrap up any resources that they can. And they want to make picks via Lissandra if they ever can, but that's just not going to happen, and they're going to get punished for it. And so this is actually really nice. This is a really nice, slow, methodical execution. You notice that even though they're deathballing mid, they're not doing so like TSM or something, right? Where they just overly try to force an advantage. There's a slow, methodical execution going on right now. And this is how you should play, especially if it's going to be tournament life. To some people commenting about the refugee comment, there was a Protoss style in StarCraft 1 called Refugee Toss, where you would just constantly throw up expansions, use Dark Templars and High Templars defensively, and just keep running around the skies with carriers, and it was called Refugee Toss. The same exact principles and concepts apply to when you're playing Refugee in League, and you're really far behind on gold, and you just keep running around and preventing fights, so long as the enemy team is incapable of cracking the final line of defense. And through that, you try to muster up as many resources as you can to finally try to break out. There's nothing, there's no ill joke or tasteless humor going on there. This is a little bit bizarre teleport from Duke. I think that was, I don't know. Oh my god, Faker might go down. Okay, well, that teleport by Duke I think was really bad. I also don't know about this Baron, because you are facing a Gragas, a Kalista, and a Bard. Does Gragas have ulti? No, he doesn't. He almost has ulti. Is there anything they can do? I think if they can Bard ulti like 3 people, oh my god. And Gragas ult is coming up in like 5 seconds. Oh. 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 Get him, Bard. Get him, Bard. Take him on that magical journey. Oh my god. I think there's hidden meaning between a Bard Kalista lane, where Bard takes you on a magical journey, and then the thing that shows up at the very end is like some chick looking like she's from the Ring, and she's really like ghostly and shit. You're like, are you sure these were the right pills? Like, I don't know really what to say about that, but next thing you know, like you're tied down to a chair. She's like sticking things in you, and she's gonna rend them. Like, I don't know. I don't know about this. That was such a nice cosmic binding. It wasn't the most perfect. I think it could have been angled to hit Uzi. Or Uzi. I don't know how the hell you say it. And honestly, I mean, okay. And now basically with how the map looks, I think actually it would have been, I guess without the teleport you can't really do a 1-1-3. But I think a 1-1-3 into a 1-0-4 would have been most ideal. That is a really nice Bard ultimate. That was like Kanye West going up to Taylor Swift. He's like, "Hold on, I'm gonna let you defend." But that was one of the greatest Baron steals of all time. Holy crap. Well. I mean, Bard's outfit looks like Kanye West's clothing line, so he does have that going for him. He's gonna like it. Oh, man. Oh, jeez. I just hope that SKT can get like a 50,000 gold lead, you know? Like, so that they can say that they're not 50 million in debt. Alright, well, I don't think that would... Actually, no, something like that did happen once, right? M5? It came back from something like a 50,000 gold deficit, or like 40,000? Maybe someone in chat. CLGEU versus M5. It was something absolutely gigantic. Okay. I really don't like that Bard ulti, but I don't think it's going to matter because I think that they're too far ahead at this point. But this is very, this is sort of TSM-ish, in the sense that you don't really have to do this. At this point, you can just do a 1-4-0, and then as the 4 people in mid lane, you just kind of want to show yourself, and then you want to back up and taunt them and spam, you know, control 4. That's all that you want to be doing right now is SKT. Is every time they show up on your screen in mid lane, you want to spam control 4, and you just want to push top lane. And then eventually when they have to send someone to go deal with the person in top lane, then you just have them conjoin with you in mid, or if it's Fiora, you just have them control 4 in front of Poppy too and keep shoving the lane anyway. And then eventually you just execute a 1-4-0 until there comes a breaking point inside of the Nexus turret, and then you can join and be a 5-0-0. And then you keep up the siege, and then you eventually break off. You have one person not recall while the other 4 do recall. You have them prevent and proxy the mid wave, or not proxy, but delay the mid wave, and then you enable them to recall and then secure a neutral objective. They're executing a 1-3-1, even though their comp doesn't support it, just because they're so far ahead. But it is a mistake. They shouldn't be doing this. Also, the QSS on Fiora, I don't think nearly is as strong as Guardian Angel, so I think that's bad as well. I don't know what LeBlanc's next item is going to be. Gragas going for Dead Man's Plate I think is also unnecessary. I think you just get Guardian Angel. I'm a huge Guardian Angel fan, but it's not just because... I mean, the item is extremely powerful and misunderstood. And it always has been. The one thing that the QSS is granting, though, is Duke's able to overextend inside of the base because there's not much that Lissandra can do to him. So that's really nice. Now all that SKT really needs to do is they just continue to lean on QG right here. I'm almost confident, though, that if this was a certain team, there would have just been a team fight under mid tower, and if they lost the game, they probably would have proceeded to lose the next 3 team fights, and then Reddit, you know. There's no reason for that. Defense is offense right now. Like, obviously you could try to you know, bust open mid, and you can try to go for the fights, you know, because some people may be watching this are wondering, if you Bard ulti bot lane to get the tower, why don't you just Bard ulti mid to get the tower? And because right now defense is offense. Put yourself in QG's shoes and ask yourself, what don't you want SKT to do? I'll tell you what, the answer is not, you don't want them to back off. You don't want them to go for Baron. You don't want them to control the vision. You don't want to fight for vision. You want them to dive you under mid tower because that is the biggest chance you have at winning against them. You actually do want, you know, you really do want that 30-70 if you're QG right now. You do not want to go into a 10-90 because SKT is really disciplined And look, this is what ends up happening. They end up fighting for vision that they cannot contest. They're in no position to try to gain this vision. There's a ticking time bomb inside of their main via Fiora. There's the super minions pushing down when you only have one Nexus turret. By doing nothing, you're doing everything if you're SKT. And I don't understand why so many teams don't understand that. Now, here, they're doing it, they're executing it. Could it have been more refined? Absolutely. Is there mistakes SKT was making that could have been done even better? Yes. But was the intent there? Were they within, were they within a few levels of the proper refinement? Absolutely. So they end up winning. So that was really clean. I think they played their composition really well. I think the weaknesses of the composition weren't really exposed, and I think that they just outplayed QG at every single area. So they end up securing the win. QG, I think, was extremely reckless with their aggression sometimes. I think their decision making for certain objective controls and neutral objective areas to control was relatively poor. And I don't know. I feel like that was a little bizarre. That guy, like, in the middle there, he just went to get a hand tap, and then it seems like I don't know, his face looked disappointed, I don't know. Anyway, so that was it for SKT versus QG. Hope you enjoyed it.